Okay, that's what we wanted to hear.
Yeah. Okay.
Lovely to meet you, Nicholas.
Well,
As
good
you
to
know,
meet
we're
you.
both writing together a book called Uncovered 2021. And the idea of this interview is just for the potential audience to get to know a bit more about the co-authors and make them more excited about buying the book. Uh, could you first give us a little bit of introduction about yourself so people know who you are?
Yeah, for sure. Nicholas Jeffrey, 65, married, 4 children, living in Budapest in Hungary at the moment. It's home. Still traveling globally, but nowhere as much as I did pre-COVID. Career's really been split into three fairly equal sections. First section during the 80s, I was a brand custodian, consulting, advertising agency, marketing companies, but we looked after some of the world's biggest brands. So we looked after Eastman Kodak at its peak. We looked after J&J and did all of its branding and all of its company acquisitions. And then we did Reebok, and we designed the brand from the floor up and even came up with the name. Second section of my career was really in banking. And I moved into banking because as an entrepreneur, you've always got your hand out looking for cash. And nobody really then makes the transition over to the banks to find out actually what they want. And I thought that would be really useful to do that. So I got a job at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD. And it's got a very weird focus because it's focused on CEE and CIS, which is everything that used to be the good old fashioned Soviet Union. And EBRD was set up to create market led economies and settle everything down when all of the countries splintered off and broke off and still had their own fingers on their own weapons. So it was a way of getting money into this entire ecosystem of circa 25 countries. So I took over the responsibility of investment planning and strategy for telecommunications, media, and technology, TMT. And I was there for about 6.5, 7 years. Really loved it. And it gave me the ability to talk at the top table globally because I was responsible for investing capital and then clubbing the remaining capital together. And I met Putin and met Medvedev, and met presidents and prime ministers and all sorts of people. And I felt like James Bond's dad at
Mhm.
some point. It was very, very funny environment, but it was really, really refreshing. The last part of my career has all been in the technology space. So it's light touch technology, looking at where AI meets, or where Internet of Things or Web3 meets traditional industries. Those industries might be natural resources, they might be healthcare, they might be financial services, but it's where there is some digital disruption. And we've built a business that helps people transition through that digital disruption. And that's culminated in a business where I am the founding partner and the managing partner. It's headquartered in Vancouver. It's got capabilities in London, in Kampala, in Africa, and also in Hungary, where I'm based. So, not slowed down, thoroughly enjoying it. Can't see myself retiring anytime soon, but pleased Warren Buffett is still going at 85. Still gives me at least 5 years or 10 years left.
Very wide and varied career, very much a pioneer, it seems, in your career. Um, I'm now
Thank you.
going to ask you three questions so people can get to know you even more. First one is, could you elaborate on the ways in which you provide assistance to your clients and the impact it has on their pursuits?
Well, I think that word impact is the end game, and I'll
Mm.
come to that last. But we've played around with impresario, beginning with an I, impact, beginning with an I, and we try and put the meat in the sandwich between those two. And we came up with a thing called the 4 I's. So the first I is insight. So you really shouldn't embark on an endeavor unless you know what the end game is or what you're going to encounter along the way. So people come to us because we know the market, or we know the issues, or we know the opportunities, or we know the brands. So people sort of come to us and say, right, okay, we know you know this, so can we work with you? Or they come to us and go, look, we want to go and work in Nigeria. We've got no idea of the landscape there. Can you help us find out how our product is going to resonate and fit? So that's the insight piece. The next piece is innovation. And traditionally, innovation means new product innovation. But what we're about is innovation in the broader commercial corporate sense. So it might be sales innovation. How do we get channel to market in a different way? How do we get to new markets? How do we spin out other products to give us other revenue streams? How can we link blue to green and now have purple, exactly the same cost base, but now another product which doesn't denigrate or dilute what we've already done? So that's the innovation piece. The next piece is influence. And I jokingly say this, is not necessarily politically correct, but if you wink or you smile at a woman
Mm.
across the room in a party in the dark, you're the only one that knows you're doing it. She has no idea. And it's a little bit like that when I think about global branding and global marketing communications. Unless you can speak to the audience with some level of resonance and some level of provenance, these people are not going to know of you, or if they do know of you, do not think you're appropriate to talk to and do not think you're the right company for them. So what we try and do is make sure that because of our network of influential people globally, we can put your brand at the top table to have confidence with these stakeholders and with these people of influence. So it's so much more than marketing communications, website, PR, social media. This is almost more like lobbying than it is marketing communications. The last I out of four is probably the most obvious, and it's investment. Because if you've got these grandiose ideas as an entrepreneur, as an owner of a business, and you want to get from A to X, you're going to need fuel in the tank. You're going to need money. And it's so difficult to find money at the moment. So difficult because the market is completely fragmented and imploded. So you've got the situation where venture capital has sort of disappeared. And the reason it's disappeared is all of those smart people down the bottom end of the feed chain have moved up into private equity. And then within 5 years, less than a decade, they've moved from private equity up into sovereign wealth or family funds. Because what used to happen is the family funds used to give their money to private equity. The private equity used to go out and make investments, and venture capital used to pick crumbs off a rich man's table. But now all the money is sat in Mubadala. It's sat in Sheikh Mohammed Maktoum's sovereign wealth fund. It's sat in Kuwait. It's sat here. It's sat there. And now they've lowered the bar and said, do you know what? Yeah, we can do 10 million. Before they wouldn't even get out of bed for 100 million. Now they're sort of going, well, we got the people because we stole them all from venture capital and private equity. So those two have sort of imploded. It's centralized into some big players in private equity, but sort of venture capital has disappeared. So what we did is we always prepared people for raising capital. So we always said, right, okay, you need a P&L, you need a valuation, you need uses of funds, you need an information memorandum, you need this, you need this, you need this. And most entrepreneurs don't know how to do it. We help them do it. And then what we used to do is say, right, okay, we'll introduce you to some people with money. But the interesting thing happened was we were leaving money on the table, one thing. The second thing is we lost control of that client where we knew as much about the client as the CEO did. Venture capital swooped in or private equity swooped in and go, great, thanks, Nicholas. Love what you've done. We'll give you a ring back if we need something else. And we'd gone. We'd make some money, whatever, but we were gone. And we looked at it as a company and went, no, we'd like to continue growing this. How do we help this owner grow? Our sales expertise, our marketing expertise, our four eyes. How can we deploy that to make money, to make revenue, to build brands? And the only way we could do it is find a wallet of money that we could invest alongside private equity. So private equity could come in and go, yeah, we'll give you 2.5 million. And we could then turn around and say, yep, we'll give the other 2.5 million. Now we've got a seat at the table and we know the company. So that's where the four eyes sort of come together. And that's what we've been deploying for the last 7 years.
Have you seen innovative ways in which people are getting around the problems of lack of private investment?
Um, First of all, they're going where the money flows fastest. So there is a massive migration of tech capital to Kuwait, to Qatar, to Dubai, to Abu Dhabi, because the opinion in there is so much money, it's relatively easy to get it. The problem is the Arabic, the Sharia way of doing business is not the same as you do it in France. It's not the same as you do it in the UK. So people are going, oh, look, there's the rainbow. Guess what? There's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. They all go charging off, and it is very different. And guess what? They never find the end of the rainbow. But they've wasted an awful lot of time, an awful lot of money. So the migration of finding capital is the first thing. The second thing is they've started to look at intelligent bootstrapping to get you from pre-revenue up to minimum viable product, and then get you up to seed revenue where you can start to demonstrate you've got some traction. And rather than just add on more years, which is so painful for the entrepreneurs, they've sort of tried to work, how can I condense this from my initial concept through my minimum viable product into seed revenues and bring that down to the period that I used to spend on phase one. I'm now doing phase one, phase two, phase three, and I'm cutting down my costs and working more smartly. So I think the interesting thing, it's better defined and refined the process of the entrepreneur to get the business to a later stage than he had to a decade ago.
Excellent. Thank you for that. The next question is, envisions a world where you have the influence to make significant changes. What would be the defining characteristics of that transitional reality, transformed reality?
I think I
And
would,
you,
I think I would,
yeah.
I think I would throw the four eyes out of the window, which is crazy because we were the guys that invented them. But I think unless you can do something with environmental sustainability, there's almost no point. So your comment in the first question is about the understanding of impact. So I've come up with this thing called 3IC, which is Impresario, Impact, Investment, Corporation. And what that's trying to do is to say that group will use all the tools that we've got, the four eyes and AI, and bring that all to bear to businesses that will make a fundamental impact to saving the planet. And saving the planet sounds a bit grandiose and a bit dramatic, for which I don't apologize, because I think we are there. And people come to me and go, oh, I've got this great new thing which basically gets the plastic out of the water. Okay. But my issue is, if, like an alcoholic, your first step to recovery or savior is acknowledging you are one.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe as a planet and the bulk of the planet and the biggest stakeholders on the planet, we have to acknowledge, regardless of the time frame, it's short, but we are running pretty fast into a brick wall. So getting more plastic out of the water sort of helps the species, great, but will the species survive? So I'm of the opinion we should be looking at things that, as per the Paris Accord, we don't allow people to get out of jail free and say, yeah, don't worry about the fact you didn't hit 5%, go for 7. No, we've got to get them from 7 down to 4, down to 3, down to 2. So anything that impacts that, carbon sequestration is an interesting one without the carbon credits, but carbon sequestration is an interesting one. But how do we punch through that wall to allow us to move to Mars, or allow us to move underwater, or allow us some more time to come up with the technology that's going to save us? So 3IC is really focused on those big issues. And that's the bit that I sort of want to try and impact with our management consultants and our private equity to do those type of impact investments, because that's where I think money needs to be deployed. And if I had all the money in the world, I would put 20% of it in saving the mess that we've got now, and 80% of it moving that brick wall or punching a hole through it.
And where do you see the tensions between the developed world and the developing world in managing this problem?
Well, Africa has to make the biggest changes because of its impact of global warming, and they weren't the cause of global warming. So, yeah, of course they're annoyed. So you're saying I can't have refrigeration, or I can't have this, or I can't have coal-fired power stations because of global warming. Yeah, but I didn't create the global warming. You did. And you've had the advantage for the last 10 decades. No, it's our time now. So that's the biggest issue that we've got. And the second thing is people make money, and they want to make more money, and they want to make more money, and they want to make their shareholders richer, and they want to push their share price. They can't get their head around this at a diminished margin or a diminished profitability is acceptable. You know, the adage, which was, I thought when we came through COVID, we had the perfect excuse as corporations to reset ourselves. We didn't. The mantra was, we've got to invest more to get back to pre-COVID numbers. You heard it again and again and again. Lufthansa borrowed billions, millions to keep their head above water, but they paid the money back in 18 months.
Wow.
So they hit that runway and took off at a faster rate than pre-COVID, where I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice for Lufthansa to turn around and go, shareholders, we don't need as much profit. You'll all get dividends, you won't get as much, but actually we'll only do 100,000 flights, not 500,000. The impact on the planet is going to be significant. Guess what? The 100,000 we've just given you, you can spend it because we're all going to be here still. Now, nobody stepped up with that strategy because everybody was saying, got to make more, got to make more, got to make more, got to make more. And nobody tried to use COVID as a reset, which I think is a real shame, because I think in a way, whatever conspiracy theory you believe in, the planet gave us a warning and we didn't heed it. We didn't listen. And we're back in a worse place now, accelerating even faster towards a brick wall. So I'm saying that impact investment around that 80-20 split needs to be finding a way to punch the way through the wall with fantasticous ideas like going to Mars, or push that wall back so we can come up with technologies like carbon sequestration, where we can go from that Paris Accord 5% to 4% to 3% to 2%.
What do you think would need to change in the way in which maybe businesses are rewarded to change their behavior?
Well, I don't really see any incentive to cut my carbon footprint, because carbon credits sort of work, sort of don't. It's a bit smoke and mirrors. Nobody really understand it. And you see these presentations and they're so fantastical, and you go, hell, what are you doing? But we invest in a farm in Uganda
Hmm.
on Lake Choga, which is north of Lake Victoria. And it's a young Canadian guy. That's the connection between Impresario Canada and Uganda. And he's growing moringa, which is this miracle tree, which is
Hmm.
great for carbon sequestration. But he came up with the idea that Lake Choga is being choked by water lilies, by weeds. Whilst they're pretty, they take all the nitrogens and all the oxygen out of the water, and all the fish die. So he found a way of dragging the lake, taking the lake weed out, and taking all those nutrients and putting it into a natural fertilizer as garden material around the moringa trees.
Hmm.
Because it's so nitrogen rich, the trees grew quicker. It grew more leaves. The leaves got turned into nutraceuticals. But there was also a carbon footprint because we were clearing the lake, allowing more nutrients to stay in the lake, more fish, more oxygenated, cleaner water for the people that live around the lake. But also, we were creating a natural fertilizer for the trees. Now, stunning story. Can you imagine the red tape and the shenanigans and the problems that we had to go through to say, how can we commercialize this? Can we get a carbon credit for it? How do we do this? Yeah, well, you need 25,000 consulting to start, and then you need 250,000 consulting to do this, and then you've got to go to this independent study, and then we'll put you on there. And the whole thing feels like a scam. So I'm saying take those great ideas, of which there's probably hundreds or thousands, and put the resources in around them. So those innovators, like this guy, Aaron, these innovators really get rewarded for doing the great good they're doing in Africa or wherever they are on the planet. And that's the way to create evangelists. And that's the way to create a catalyst for change.
Excellent. There's so many good ideas I hear around the world. It's a question of how can we scale them up, I think, in some situations, and share the good
Scale it and
ideas.
make it work, scale it and make it worthwhile for people to continue because it's hard, really hard. He's been running this farm for 15 years. I don't even know whether he's still at break even yet. It's hard, but he's doing so many things for community farming, for technology and agribusiness, for all sorts of things. There's so many things going on there, but we just need to find ways to make it worthwhile him doing it.
Excellent. Thank you. The final question is, what do you feel about the emerging impact of AI on human resources, especially emerging university graduates each year?
So AI is a bit like the phrase "I love you."
Mm.
Everybody uses it, but it means different things to different people and different degrees of depth. So the generation of AI that we've got at the moment, let's put the handle of Chat GPT on there. There's two issues. One, it is scraping data from within the box of the internet, and it delivers you back one answer. It's not like Google, which gives you 2,500 books to read or websites to go and look at. It gives you one answer. So I believe it's like rolling over a landmine with a steamroller. You probably won't hear the thing go off. So if there is an idea just outside the box here on the right or just outside here on the box on the left, it is unlikely to pick it up. And it relies on you to give ChatGPT the most intelligent prompt that you can. And then not just take the easy way out and say, oh, turn your answer into a PDF so I can drop it into my PowerPoint or turn it into a Word document so I can present it to my boss. You should be able to and be confident enough and astute enough or savvy enough to challenge what you've got and go, this is really interesting. Can you develop that thesis? Or this is really interesting. Can you do this? So I was late to ChatGPT because I didn't want to use it because I believed it would stifle my creativity and it would take away the strategic thinking that I normally bring to projects. But what it does do, it gets me up that ladder really, really quickly. But I sort of have to stop and acknowledge that it's given me what it believes is the single point of truth. That's not actually correct. And there might be something out here which is fascinating. It's not seen. And that's the answer, but it's just not seen it. So somebody's got to come back in and have a look at it. I'll give you a very quick example. We worked on a project with an African country to think about what they are going to do with the sugarcane, which is so poor they can't use in the food services industry. So they have to import sugar. This is an African country. And we sort of said, okay, what do you do with it? Yeah, we just burn it and get it out of the way because there's nothing you can do with it. So we started to have a look at what you can do with poor quality sugarcane. And you've got all the usual stuff, can you feed it to animals? Can you make it into building materials? Blah, 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 blah. But the margins out of that effort for the plant you have to put in place, I mean, plant by machinery, what we have to put in place sort of doesn't make the returns in time. But we stumbled outside the box a sugarcane into aviation fuel,
Wow.
environmental aviation fuel. And you look at the margin for that product, it's gargantuan. It's almost better to make aviation fuel than it is to distill it into cane sugar. I don't think ChatGPT is going to come up with that because it is so left field that it doesn't capture it in the time, the nanoseconds it's filtering all this stuff, and it probably didn't have a high enough ranking up the charts for ChatGPT to even look at it. Now, if ChatGPT comes back and says, look at cosmetics, look at this, look at this, look at this, and then you say to it, now just analyze the margins to see whether those margins are rich or where, rank the margins for me. And you come back and say, oh, the margins are like 5%. Yeah, I want something more than that. So you go back to ChatGPT and say, no, I'm looking for 30% margins. Now go and have another look again. So you've now asked it 3 questions. It's now back in the internet, exploring the different routes and then saying, oh, I've just found this, because it matches your prompt of looking for 30% margin. It wouldn't have done it if I just said, what am I going to do with my burnt sugarcane? It wouldn't have found it. So the impact that it's going to have on people is Morgan Stanley, McKinsey's, all of these people are laying off 400, 500, 800 people worldwide at the bottom end of the market, the graduate end of the market, because they are the people that were doing the number crunching. They were the people that were doing the base research. And the people at the top are going, hell, we don't need 800 people. Maybe we need 100 really good people. We don't need the other 700. And we'll get those good 100 people to be more intellectually, strategically probing and use AI to do the rest of the work. So 700 people are going, I've just spent 4 or 5 years qualifying for this job and you don't need me. Because the pace of AI is moving so rapidly that the people in this catch haven't been able to zig when the whole world is zagging. So if you look at the agribusiness industry in America in the 1800s, it employed circa 80% of the population. Today, it employs less than 1%.
Wow.
But that's okay, because it's hundreds of years to get used to this, to get used to machinery, to get used to tractors, to get used to this, to get used to that. But what we're dealing with now is changing in months, is changing in quarters. So where I see AI on a prompt-based response, I think it's got faults, I think it's got issues, but it's got great advantages. But AI version 1, you ain't seen nothing yet. You know, ChatGPT is on version, what, 5 in the space of 18 months? So when AI talks to AI, as we've seen in a couple of lovely little stories, this artificial intelligent agent knows that this is another artificial intelligent agent, and they switch out of English into code. And they start talking and they start collaborating. There is no human interaction here. Now, next generation of AI will then have machine learning, ML. So a good example is back into the agribusiness industry. So I've got a massive, great big field. I send up a drone and I'm actually controlling it by hand. So there's a person involved. I'm controlling it by hand and I'm flying it around the field, and it's got a camera underneath and is analyzing the growth of the crops in different parts of the field. And it sends that data instantaneous in real time back down to a server. The server captures the data. The artificial intelligence then views column by column by column and goes, that's really interesting, because 9/10 of the field is cool, 1/10 of the field is not good. and it works out in nanoseconds that it's a water issue, it's not a fertilizer issue, or it's not a poor quality soil issue. So it talks to the drone and going, thank you very much indeed. Please go and pick up the water from that canister and go and water just 1/10 of the field, forget the 9/10. Now, what it does, because it's mapped the field with geopositioning, doesn't even need the person to fly the drone.
Mm.
So what happens to the farmers? They get more productive. What happens to the yields? They increase. What happens to the margins? They get more. But people get laid off or they have to get retasked. I'm saying it's the role of state to work out what are we going to do with these people. And there could be an environmental dividend out the back of it for us to go, well, actually, I'm being employed by the state to do the 20% of the planet cleanup, and I'm not embarrassed about doing that type of work because I know I'm saving the planet or doing my bit to save the planet. So that's why I'm saying there's got to be a juxtaposition transition about what's going on and where we put our resources and how we deploy people. Because all of these smart people coming out of universities thinking they were going to go into Ernst & Young, Morgan Stanley, EY, they are not.
But what role do you think universities should be playing? I know things are moving very quickly in redesigning their courses to prepare people for an uncertain world.
Yeah, I think it's a case of, can you push the intellectual thinking of the students higher to think strategically outside the box, not inside the box? So acknowledge how AI and Chat GPT source and scrape and deliver data, but what can you as a student analyze?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a famous surgeon or a doctor and somebody comes in with a series of symptoms, you're not going to go, oh, bloody hell, your leg looks pretty rough. What I'm going to do is chop it off. You're going to sort of go, what's the cause and effect of why your leg looks like it looks? Oh, hell, you've got diabetes. Therefore, it's a lifestyle thing. Therefore, this, therefore, this, therefore, this. So if you can get your graduates up to that level and go, no, this isn't about just finding the single source of truth. You've got to look outside the box because that's what Chat GPT and AI needs. Doesn't need what's inside the box. It's done better than you can do it. So forget that. It's what's outside the box. Now, that could be taught, and it could be taught relatively quickly because the people teaching it have come from that environment. They haven't used ChatGPT. They've come from the library, sitting down, thinking, desktop research mode. So they are great stewards of that thinking. So I think that's the way we've got to go. But the speed of change is quarter by quarter by quarter, not decade by decade, not even year by year. So I'm saying these things have to be thought through very quickly, and you have to get significant, and governments are deploying people that don't know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
The head of AI for Canada does not have one qualification or 1 ounce of experience to run that role.
Mm.
Head of AI for Canada. What the hell? So you've got to think about who are going to be the stewards of these graduates coming out to retask them rapidly and subtly into something where they're going to have an impact on the world and an impact on their careers. It's got to happen now.
Fascinating, because you it's not cheap to go university and to come out without a job and that massive debt you come out with. It's
Yeah,
not good.
no, not at all. Not at all.
Well, thank you very much for your time, sir, Nicholas. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Um,
No, absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
and we will be hopefully we'll catch up as a group sometime before the book launch to share experience and see how we can take things further forward because immense wealth of talent amongst us.
Delightful. All right. Well, if I can be of any further assistance, please don't